Hey everybody. So today we are going to be talking about your first assessment on the 4 questions. And before I begin, I want to talk a little bit about how assessments work in this class. So most of the things that I ask you to do in animal behavior are going to be what I consider to be skills. So observing animal behavior is a skill. I'm not going to ask you to memorize things about specific animals' behaviors. Instead, I'm going to ask you to become proficient at observing behavior and describing what you see in a way that's useful scientifically. Or I'm not going to ask you to learn all about why a specific behavior happens or when. Instead, I'm going to ask you to learn about the questions we can ask and what good answers look like. So those are skills. And whenever I give you something in this class that's called an assessment, you should imagine that you're going to be redoing that kind of assessment with different behaviors multiple times. And I'm going to be looking at the evidence over time to see how you change and develop as an animal behaviorist. So because they're skills, your first attempts do not necessarily represent where you're going to end up at the end of the class. So today you're going to be taking on an assessment on describing the causes of behavior. And this will fit under the category of making predictions about the 4 questions. And let's say you get a 2 on it, right? First time out, kind of struggle, not really sure what it means, this causes business, you don't quite understand the notes, or you make a mistake. And then you get some feedback from me, because that's what's going to happen. You're going to come back to this document after I've given you feedback and see what you need to fix. And if you write a better prediction the next time, let's say you get a 3. Well, the 2 then goes away, because now you're at a 3. And then if you're at a 4 and so on. And most students, that's exactly what happens. They get better over time as long as you try to improve based upon previous scores. So don't stress overly much that this is an assessment, but this is an assessment and I want you to give it your best effort. This should be your own work. So even if you've been communicating with other people in the class about the general topics or what we're supposed to do, you can't copy someone else's answers. And if you do, I can't give you credit for that answer. It doesn't represent what you're able to do, the skills you have. So today's assessment is about a human behavior. And I try in this course to kind of go back and forth between examples of animals doing behaviors and then humans doing behaviors, because humans are animals and most people find the behaviors humans do fairly interesting. But I also don't want to make this course all about human animal behavior, because that's really what psychology is for. Okay, so this is about the human behavior of riots. And before we get started, I'd like you to consider what that word riot really means. So here I have some images. Sometimes in the media and the press, they use the words riot and protest to be the same thing, and they're not. In this image here, we have some contrasting images. So on the top here, this is an example of a riot. People that are violent, people that are damaging property or damaging other people. This would be an example of a protest. There can be a lot of intense emotions in a protest, but a protest is not at its core about violence. It's about a message. It's about power in a group's idea. Again, here at the top, this is an example of a protest, a large group of people who are expressing their rights. This is an example of a riot. Now, it's sometimes true that protests turn into riots. Riots don't really turn into protests, but most protests don't turn into riots. And it's unfortunate that sometimes those words are used, that language is used interchangeably. And also, unfortunately, I think that sometimes has to do with the race or religion or ethnicity of the people that are engaged in a protest. They're often identified as rioting. But rioting, according to social scientists, needs to include violent acts against other people or property. So in this example, we're going to be listening to a social scientist, which is really just a type of animal behaviorist who studies people. His name is Malcolm Gladwell. So if you look at the introduction here, Malcolm Gladwell studies human behavior, and in this video, he proposes an explanation for the difficult to understand human behavior of school shootings. In particular, he's interested in why school shootings are increasing so rapidly in 2015. Um, he proposes an explanation by comparing school shootings to riot behavior. And riots are a well understood human behavior. The frequency of school shootings is not a well understood human behavior. We know it's happening, but we don't really understand why it seems to be increasing in the United States. Riots are well understood, though, and they're defined as group behavior that involves destruction of property or harming of others. And social scientists are interested in riot behaviors because people often do things while they're rioting that they would never imagine doing in another situation. People are interviewed after riots, and they frequently say, "Well, I didn't know what happened. Just like I lost control, and it was like I didn't know what was going on, what my body was doing, and I couldn't control myself." And that is a social behavior, a behavior of a group, where normally rational, calm, nonviolent people all of a sudden do things that they consider to be unthinkable. So, of course, this is an interesting behavior to study. How does that happen? Now, the whole video is interesting, but you're really only going to listen to the first 5 minutes and 30 seconds or so that you'll need to complete the assignment. If you want to listen to the rest of it and hear how he lays out how riots are connected to school shootings, you'd listen beyond that point. But that's up to you. You do need to listen to the 5 minutes and 30 seconds, first 5 minutes and 30 seconds, and you'll click on that link here. So then, using what you know about behavior causes from your notes, and you're welcome to use your notes. This is open notes if you want. Please answer the following questions. And you're gonna, you may feel like you don't know for sure what the answer is, and that's okay, because what I'm asking you to do is make predictions. And predictions don't have to be right. They just have to fit the question that's being asked. So in this case, I'm going to ask you about what causes riots. As long as your prediction shows me you understand what behavior causes are and connects to what what might be true about riots, according to Malcolm Gladwell, you'll be just fine. You are going to have to add some of your own interpretation, though. You are not just like listening for what Malcolm tells you to write down. You're going to listen to what he says, think about it, and then figure out how to write it out. Now, this is an assessment, so I'm expecting your answers to be fully developed. You're going to need to write in sentence format, and you're going to need to fully explain why you believe, or what you believe, the internal causes and the external causes are. There has to be both. Behaviors require that you have an internal and an external cause, but often one is more motivating than the other, right? So in this case, you're going to evaluate what's the cause of riots for the first person to start a riot, because social scientists tell us that that's different than the causes of riot behavior for the 99th person. And so you're going to evaluate what the internal and external causes are for each of those kinds of people. You might also want to consider what you think your number is. I'd just be curious, for you to like think about what you would be. And then the third question is, who do you believe is more internally motivated, the first person or the 99th? And in this question, I'm really looking to see that you can make an argument that shows me you understand the differences between internal and external motivation, so that you can say, well, look, here's why I believe this person is more internally motivated. That would be a good sentence starter. I believe this person is more internally motivated because, and then go on and write a few sentences explaining why you believe that's true. Make sure everything you write ties back to the concept of behavior causes, because that's what I'm going to be looking for in the assessment. Not that you've memorized everything there is to know about riots, right? If you have questions, please message me on Schoology, and good luck.